All right, thanks for joining our session today, AI-powered personalization, transforming education. And we're excited to share with you some dialogue, a little bit of research, and then dialogue and examples around what personalization looks like and can look like as we go forward, as things evolve, for sure, with AI becoming more and more mature and multimodal. And also as users and educators, us becoming more adept at incorporating those into the roles that we have. And when I say educators, I want to make sure that folks know I'm including folks like learning designers, academic champions, those that are supporting the instructional role and the learner experience. So all inclusive on that. A lot of it will be faculty-based today in our session, but you can certainly think of course design more broadly. Today, I'm pleased to have Danny Liu joining me. I guess I'll get my introduction out of the way first, and I'll get to Danny. So I'm Brett Christie, and I'm VP for Educational Innovation and Inclusivity at Alchemy. I've been in that role close to 4 years now, and before that, I was in higher education in a different capacity. I was at the campuses and also at the Cal State system, and I worked as a faculty development or a faculty member in a couple of different departments and disciplines, and also worked as a faculty development director. I did grants and special projects that were related to faculty development, universal design for learning, course redesign, all sorts of things. It's my pleasure to introduce Danny Liu, who's joining us today from University of Sydney, or from home near University of Sydney. And Danny is now at, I think, 5:04 a.m. And I want to thank him for getting up so early to join us and all of the expertise he's bringing and bringing that at a very challenging hour. So that's why we have a different start time, some of you may have noticed, than our usual 12 a.m. or 12 p.m. Eastern. Danny is somebody who, November 2022, when generative AI bust out on the scene via ChatGPT at the time, there were people who early on were really thinking about what does this mean, what's possible, what are the advantages, exciting things, what are some challenges and possible solutions to those challenges. And Danny was one of the names that I just saw pop up early and often and was really putting deep thought into what this means for teaching and learning. And so I'm pleased to have him back. He was one of our first presenters, I believe it was last May or maybe June. Maybe our most highly attended webinar as well, where we focused on assessment, AI on assessment. So we're going to have a different topic today with Danny featured and a project he's been working on more recently at University of Sydney. So let's dive into our topic and get started today. This is just sort of a look back of where we've come in the last about 12 months now, where we've been focusing on a lot of topics, but we've had a continual track of AI in education and what that means. And I've been involved, but each time I've had at least one other person involved in these topics who brings in their perspective and their expertise from where they sit at their institution and in their role. And at the end of this session, we'll give you the link to a page where we have all of these recordings propped up, but also the resources that were part of these sessions. So that will be coming. And that's just a reminder here as well to make sure keep utilizing the chat, please. We'll try and keep an eye on that as much as possible. And then also know that we're going to share the recording to you automatically and the slides to you. So don't feel rushed on any of the information that's on there. You'll get access to it after the fact. So if we go too quickly, don't worry. Real quickly to set context, and this is just sort of where we come from as far as Alchemy and how I look at AI as well, is that AI should really be seen as your creative companion. It shouldn't be seen as something that's overpowering or overtakes. It shouldn't be seen as the enemy. Ideally, you're seeing this as something positive, as an enabler, but you're also maintaining the authority. You're the discipline expert. You're the person in control of your experience. If that's teaching and delivering your course, or if it's designing courses, you have the ultimate say in what happens. You have that expertise and you know your situation best. You know your learners best. So you want to think about the ethical and equitable use, think about accuracy and hallucinations and things like that as you use AI. Okay, so let's do a quick pulse check to check in with you and ask you, how would you define personalized learning? Before we talk about it and before we get into some of the research and the framing and some of the demonstration, let's check in with you and see how you would define personalized learning. So we'll go to a Padlet very quickly here, and you've got the link in the chat. I'll pause on this page in case anybody's using the QR code, but in a moment, I'll jump over to the Padlet Live. And just know that as you go into the Padlet, you'll be able to put in your contributions by clicking the plus that's on the screen on the Padlet and type in your response, how you define personalized learning. Now, those are anonymous, so don't worry about correct answer, wrong answer. It's really, how do you understand personalized learning from your experience? Okay, so I'm going to jump over there as well. And I see a lot of you populating in there. And Padlet will periodically refresh, and I'll go ahead and push that forward as well, just so we can start seeing some content and responses populating. No more one size. I like that. Yeah, where it's one size fits all, or I'll sometimes use the term teaching down the middle. You'll hear me say that. Ideally, we're engaging each person at their level. There's another term for that I'll have coming up. 24/7, close peer, near peer responses. I like that. Look how this is populating. This is great. Non-standard, different for each person. Some people would say the term differentiated instruction related to that. It's customized. Yeah, it's responsive to the skills and the needs of the student. It gets to know their characteristics. It's adaptive. That's another term that'll come up. These are great. It can be based on formative assessments. That's what can inform the system that's going to be driving the personalized learning. It can be based on those early and formative assessments, those knowledge checks along the way. Great. Individualized for the student, learning path that meets users' needs. Great. One-on-one tutoring, we'll talk about tutoring and how that definitely relates, but how that can be a little bit different in some ways. Let's see, personalized feedback. Feedback is essential. Timely and effective feedback is one of the most important things. And so that's certainly an important element of personalized learning. This is great, people. No surprise. And a little bit more here coming in. We'll pause. And I'll wait here for a moment while any others are populating, then we'll move on. But I want to let you know that what we're going to do is we're going to synthesize this. Danny is actually, while I keep going, Danny's going to take all of your comments and process those and reflect back how you defined personalized learning. So we'll get to that a little bit later in the session. These are great, all great responses. I see inclusive down on the lower left. Yes, if it's personalized, then it's meeting each individual's needs. Therefore, it is inclusive to all individuals. And yeah, it reaches those in the back row. Ideally, there's no back row. Love it. Thank you. Great check-in there. Let's go ahead and go forward. Okay, so let's go ahead and touch on some of the research on personalization and student success. So this is going to be brief, but I want to make sure that we acknowledge some of these things, that we give attribution to some of those who have paved the way, if you will. Going back to Socrates and the Socratic method, and where he started working with his students to not just lecture to them, but to go into questioning and to try and form deeper meaning, to get into critical thinking and discovery learning. So that was definitely an early move toward personalization. Skip over Rousseau. Rousseau, other than to say he did advocate for a form of personalization and learning-centered environments. But I'll jump to Vygotsky, who I'm more familiar with. My background is in curriculum and instruction. And I've always tried to think of the zone of proximal development. And maybe that's not a term that everybody uses, but you can certainly relate to it. And many of your responses on the Padlet certainly related to that. The zone of proximal development is really where ideally whatever you're doing or however the student is learning is always hovering or very close to where they exist on that concept or on that task or whatever it is. And if you can be in that zone of proximal development, then they're going to be able to move forward most effectively. If you are teaching down the middle, teaching one way to all students, and if you're teaching down the middle, then you're going to hit a fairly narrow bandwidth of students where you're successful, but you're going to have students on either end who are either over-challenged and falling behind, or going to become frustrated and disengaged. And often those are your behavioral issues as well, because they become so frustrated and disengaged. Or at the other end of the spectrum, some students who aren't challenged enough, who can become bored and disengaged, they can become problems as well. But also just for themselves, the learning becomes a problem. It's not happening at their level. So zone proximal development is kind of the magic space that you would like to be in, ideally, if you could read that easily for learners. And personalized learning can allow that to happen for them more often. Everybody's familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, maybe not necessarily the 2 sigma problem, which is his research. We'll get to that a little bit more in a moment. Tomlinson, she came up with differentiated instruction. That's used by a lot of folks, and I saw that in some of your comments, where you might have one particular task that you're trying to teach students or concept you're trying to teach them, but you may try and think of different ways to do it at different levels and have different strategies for delivering that for different students. That's great, but it can be challenging as an instructor to continually try and think of how to differentiate what you're doing unless you've taught something many times over. With Brusilovsky, that adaptive hypermedia, where he started to think about how to use hypermedia to tailor presentation of information to individual needs. And of course, from there, we got more adaptive learning systems and technologies. And over the last few decades, that's evolved somewhat, but not certainly as much as AI is now. Adaptive learning tended to be more of a linear process and gated process of moving learners along. So that's real quick on some of the origins and how those relate to today's topic. And then I'll jump a little bit more into Bloom's 2 sigma problem, because that relates to today's concept in multiple ways. So Bloom looked at studying what happens in the conventional classroom, where instruction is your standard method of one teacher teaching a group of students simultaneously using one method, a uniform curriculum. He compared that to mastery learning, which is where students are still taught in the group setting, but instruction is set up so that all students are required to achieve a high level of understanding of a topic before moving on. That would involve more formative assessments, which is great. Students are allowed to progress as they master, or if not, they are sort of held back to learn that concept before moving on to the next. Then you start getting students at different stages, and that can be complex because the supports aren't necessarily different. It's really the assessments that are differentiating students. And then there's one-on-one tutoring. So in this study, he looked at the impact specifically on one-on-one tutoring. So that's obviously a very specialized situation where each student's going to be able to have an individual tutor working with them throughout the process. So they got immediate feedback, they got customized pacing, their instruction was tailored to meet their specific needs. Now that's an ideal situation, and no surprise, the results showed that the average student with a one-on-one tutor did better than 98% of the control group, the traditional group. So that's why it's called the 2 sigma problem. You've got 2 standards of deviation is 95.4%. This was 98% of the students in the tutor group doing better than the control group. I flipped that, sorry about that. The challenges, though, to the tutoring approach, and why we haven't seen that widely adopted, it's not feasible to have one-on-one tutors. It's not economically feasible to do that, and so we haven't been able to do that. Tutors obviously exist still and play a very strong, very important role in certain situations, but it can vary depending on how good the tutor is. Also, with tutoring, the one thing I usually bring up is that there can be this stigmatization around tutoring. If somebody has to be sent to a tutor or somebody requires tutoring, there's that stigmatization that it's something negative. Or sometimes with tutoring, it can be for those who are very privileged and have these personalized tutors, or they even have now what I've heard called these homework therapists, which is a new term that I learned recently. And so these are people where sometimes you have people with a lot of money, a lot of means, and they're hiring personalized coaches or personalized tutors to help their students get through courses at a very high level, AP courses, to be able to ace those exams for entrance into the best colleges. So sometimes you have this very big split on how tutoring is used as well. So it may not be equitable. Okay, but now let's look at some of the leaps that we're seeing now with AI coming into the picture. So I chose a couple of popular examples that people can relate to as we talk about this. And then we'll get into, when Danny comes back on, we'll get into a more sort of institutional-based focus that's certainly scalable as well outside of University of Sydney. So I would imagine people are very familiar with Duolingo, and how many people, I should have done a poll, but you could always share in chat whether you've had experience with Duolingo. And if you have, maybe it was a few years ago, but now it has certainly evolved over the last 18 months or so. Yes, so currently we have people who are in it right now learning different things. I saw French, 2-year streak and counting. I love seeing that comment from Becky, because that's part of the attraction of something like Duolingo, is that engagement factor, that gaming factor, to keep those experience points going, to keep working with the peers that you've connected with, to challenge and motivate each other, learning French, learning German. So I see some people saying, no, they haven't done it. And that's fine. Maybe language learning just hasn't been part of your experience recently. This just happens to be an example I picked because it's pretty well known and it's really well developed. So what they're basing this on is learning by doing. So that's based on learning science. It's interactive. It's mobile centric, so they can learn anytime, anywhere. They can do it in 15-minute sessions, and the mobile app works really well. And it's in a personalized way, so it's going to adapt to your individual needs and your pace. So you first thing do an assessment to show what your level of proficiency is for a language. So if it's Spanish, then you're given a proficiency test. It knows where to meet you in that zone of proximal development, and then it knows how to nudge that zone forward at your pace, based on how often you interact with it and how often you perform at a certain level on the assessments. Often it's sort of 80% or better, because if you've done something at the 80% level or better, you've got a pretty good level of proficiency, but there's still that challenge, that ceiling that you're trying to approach. So it's a good motivation level, that 80%. They're using international and national standards. They help you to stay motivated. It's bite-sized. There's that gamification. There's those experience points that you're trying to collect. And again, you can invite friends and you can play along with each other. You can also put yourself out there on different leaderboards and things like that in an anonymous or not so anonymous way. The choice is yours. And they're tapping into the affective domain. Yes, it's very cute, and you'll see some of the graphics here that some people, if you're, not as into the fun type of graphics and it doesn't look as academic for you, then maybe you're not a fan of this. But for most people, they really take to something like this, and they don't mind that it's done in kind of a cute, fun way with some of these icons. But they're looking at your skills, tracking those, taking you through levels like a game, giving you lessons to progress, whether it's starting from just being able to pick the right answer in a quiz, or doing matching or building, or even to eventually it will be able to use speech recognition to analyze your pronunciations very effectively and give you feedback on that. So this is advanced really well. Let's see, looking at some of the comments real quick here. Yes, thinking of summer travel already, possibly, Michelle, so how you can learn. And I saw an article this week in looking at this talk where there was a research article showing that you can effectively learn to be fairly conversant in 4 to 6 weeks. And I forget how much time you would need to spend. I think it was about an hour a day on something like this. And learning languages requires, a lot of frequency and a lot of practice, as you know, and this works really well. And I know a lot of people, when Duolingo came out, thought, okay, there's some things that are good here, but a lot of things that it doesn't do well. And when you make statements like that, I always encourage people to say yet, especially with something like AI that's come around. It's really yet, because these things are advancing very quickly. And if you come back and look at Duolingo, if you haven't looked at it for a year or two, I think you would be really impressed and maybe even blown away by how it's evolved. Okay, so that's real quick on a Duolingo example. Maybe coming closer into the classroom for some of you to relate to is thinking about Conmigo. And so when, again, November 2022, when Gen AI exploded onto the scene, early in 2023, one of the biggest advancements related to education was Salman Khan from Khan Academy talking about how they were developing the personalized tutoring efforts, and they named this Conmigo. So kind of like Amigo or Conmigo. And this is another really powerful example that I think is going to continue to evolve and do a lot of great things to augment education in powerful ways, to enable instructors, enable students. Their vision is to democratize access to personalized education. There is a fee for instructors, it's free. For students, it's $4 a month or $44 a year. So yes, there is a fee, but $4 a month to have access to a personalized tutor across topics on demand 24/7. That's really powerful, and it'll just get better and better. It's tailoring those learning paths for each user. I'm not going to read all the bullets to you, but this has been a really powerful example. So share in the chat if you've had any experiences with Conmigo. It has started off with being, focused in the US, and it's also got a heavier presence in K through 12, but it does apply to college level learning in higher education. And so this is a quick screenshot where this is, when Salman Khan presented this early on, I mean, his big thing was this is about the Socratic method. This isn't a matter of just giving answers to students, of them plugging in the problem and it spitting out the answer. It's going to ask them, what do you think the first step is? It's going to kind of gauge where they are in that level of a problem. So if it's long division, they're already strong with it, then it's going to recognize that and it's going to be able to move them to more difficult problems. If they're having a hard time even sort of setting up the problem to run the steps through to get the answer, then it's going to take them through it, but it's going to do it through questioning, like a tutor or a coach would. So that's a really good model there, and they've got it for math and science, humanities. It can also be course-based. So a lot of great examples that you can have here. There's a parent dashboard as well, but I don't get into that. So any other, let's see, Conmigo comments? Yeah, Conmigo, and Jason, I don't know what experience or when that was as far as the hallucination, but I know that it's gotten a lot better. And also they try and keep the Conmigo experience within their content to reduce the hallucination significantly. So I think it's been pretty effective, but that's always something to look out for. Okay, I'll pause for a moment, see if any other questions or comments. Yeah, Karen, good point. There hasn't been as much emphasis. Maybe you're setting it up for our next segment here. We're going to talk about a different format, an AI agent. So we'll get to that in just a moment, and we'll see how that compares to your comment. Love it. Okay, so let me go ahead and escape and get this to reload here, and then I'll go back to share. So this is a summary of the things that you said, let's say top 10 or so things that you said about personalized learning. So customized and tailored, adapted to individual needs, flexible pacing. Certain things may go quickly for some students, certain things may go more slowly for them. That they have some choice, could be self-directed, formative assessment based, one-on-one feedback, accommodates learning approaches. I like how learning styles wasn't used because there's no such thing. There are different preferences, but not learning styles that are distinct. It's accessible or inclusive. Always love to see that in there. And meeting students where they are. And also in real time meets them where they are in that zone of proximal development. Great scaffolding on demand, and it aligns with their goals or interests. And hopefully also those goals and interests as they align them to the learning objectives of the course or professional objectives, whatever it may be, it's going to be able to adapt to that. Love it. Thank you. And thanks, Danny, for doing that in the background. Sorry, I'm a little bit hoarse today. So, and that's good timing then for Danny to take over. I'm going to stop share here and just think about, and I'll prop the question up and then we can jump to, actually, you want me to run the Padlet, Danny?
Yeah, that'd be good, actually.
Okay, so I'll stay on with my share here. But just think about what if you could build your own double? All right, so there are many of you. You're co-teaching with yourself, so to speak. You've got multiple versions of you, maybe even as many of you as students. So if that were to happen, if you could have an AI double of you, what would that look like? And that double could be available to students at all times. So the link should be into the chat, and I will go over there as well. Let me confirm that that's the case. I'm sure Kelly's done that. Yes, okay, great. Help me grade, yes. Takes a lot of time. Yeah, so critical. Assessment is so critical. It takes a lot of time. It's not always the most pleasurable thing. To answer all the syllabus policy questions. Yeah, so just sort of the nagging questions that you might get. Sometimes maybe because a student hasn't read the syllabus, sometimes maybe something wasn't stated as clearly or wasn't in there and they had a question. But how can it really just take care of some of those things that don't really necessarily need to have an email or an office hour visit? These are great. These are populating great. Okay, dear virtual me, keep track of all my to-do tasks and give timely reminders on each of the milestones. There's a tool, I think it's Goblin Tools that does that really well. If somebody knows of that and can put it into the chat. Goblin Tools is a great thing for time management and project chunking and then having checkboxes. I'm not sure how it does on reminders, but that's a good one. Let me look at some of these other comments. A research mentor. Yeah, and we did a great session a few months ago on using AI for research. So if you want to check back to that one, we'll be giving you the link here in just a little bit. Really fascinating how AI can enable the research process from forming of questions or hypotheses to helping you with lit review and then framing your research methods and even helping you to outline things. Okay, so many here. Listen to each student to learn what challenges they face. Yeah, so I love that. So empathy and also meeting them where they are at the same time. Help them with library resources, helping them find the information they need most easily. Let's see. See another for answer syllabus questions, answer questions 24/7. Great. And that's one of the things students, it's great that they have questions. It's great that they ask. And it's difficult if they have to wait 24, 48, 72 hours for a response that kind of stops them from wanting to progress, especially if they were interested in the moment. So let's see, I see a long response with a lot of great things here from content delivery, feedback and assessment, personalized assistance. Great. Somebody chat GPTing on the side here. Let's see, double trouble. Yeah, so doing all the things for the student, but also doing the things for you, sort of management of what you need to do. Supporting diverse needs, great. Well, not going to read all of these. My personal support team, love that one. And that's where I really see the power, and many people see the power of AI, is where you can utilize AI to offlift a lot of the tasks that shouldn't really require a lot of your time and a lot of your thinking and expertise, but they are taking up a lot of your time and they're preventing you from going deeper on certain things, deeper with students, giving them more of your support and assistance and attention. And then also areas you might want to go deeper, like in research and scholarship. So if you're having to do a lot of administrative and small tasks all the time, repeatedly, that take your time, then it's hard for you to go deeper in areas that really involve your expert and the humanized features of you that can really contribute to the experience. And last one, timely responses, love that as well. Okay, great. So this Padlet will stay available for you as well. So feel free to access that. I'm going to back out of the Padlet and stop share from my end. And then let's get Danny Liu up here. One moment, Danny. And you're going to get to hear about an exciting project from his end. Okay, take it away.
Right. Thanks so much, Brett, and for the Alchemy team for inviting me to help with this seminar. So I love the responses coming through in both Padlets about how we define personalized learning, and also in the latest Padlet about how an AI double, or what an AI double of yourself might actually do for your students. I've got a couple of examples that I want to show you of some of these ideas, I guess, taking life through a tool that we've been building at the University of Sydney to try and help our instructors build AI doubles of themselves. But I'll show you that very soon. The ideas that we've got here are a lot about, being a augmentation of ourselves in order to maybe answer student questions 24/7, to basically help provide personalized learning to our students, to adapt to their needs, adapt to their contexts, adapt to their I guess where they are in terms of their learning. So really great ideas here, and I do want to show you a few ideas very soon. So when we asked this to instructors here at the University of Sydney, they said very similar things. They said things like answer student questions. That's often the top one that comes through. To have possibly an AI who can be there to be available to students 24/7 and answer those syllabus questions. But a lot of our instructors are saying, well, it would be great if I had an AI double which could provide instant feedback on student drafts before they turn it in. Provide advice as they're actually constructing their reports and essays and assignments. Help them understand things like the feedback that we give them or the marking rubric that we give them, break down complex concepts, encourage creativity, coach them, facilitate group work, and also be role plays or mimic those workplace interactions to help them prepare for work afterwards. So these are really interesting ideas of what AI doubles of yourself might do, and it's we ask this question of people because often we say to ourselves as instructors, oh, if only I could clone myself, then I would get my clone to do X, and that's the idea behind this. And with AI these days and the power of AI these days, some of this is starting to be possible. And the idea here isn't to replace you as a human, completely not. The idea here is to make you, or at least a part of you, or some function that you do for your students more available 24/7, because we can't be available for our students 24/7. But AI might be able to be the best available version of ourselves in certain tasks. So the idea behind this is how can we actually leverage the power of AI to give our students these task-based doubles of ourselves so that they can actually engage with that 24/7. So around this time last year, actually, we saw ChatGPT coming out, obviously a few months before that, and we saw that our students and our instructors really wanted access to the more powerful models. Around this time last year, GPT-4 came out, which was very powerful at that time. And but it cost a lot. So in Australia, it costs about 33 Aussie dollars a month, which is far beyond what a typical college student can afford, and many instructors as well. And so there was a big access and equity issue. And so we wanted to give people access to the more powerful AI, but they wouldn't be able to pay for it. So we had to figure that out. There were also problems at that time around, safety and control. And so the idea that if we give students open access to this powerful AI model, then they can do anything they want, which is good because they can develop their own AI literacies and learn how to use AI. But it also means that we don't have control over it. And then something that we're hearing a lot is that as instructors, we really want to be able to have control or steerability over the AI to make it do certain things for us, for our students. And so there's that level of control, but also around safety and visibility that, anything that students type into ChatGPT might be used for training the model, but also we don't really know how they're interacting with it. So we can't learn as instructors how students are thinking and how they're learning. There was also obviously, and there was in the chat before as well, issues around hallucination. And so because the AI is just generally knowledgeable about everything, it's not really grounded in the context of your particular course and the resources you provide your students. And so how do we help the AI along there? And finally, the big one for at least us at the University of Sydney is was around data sovereignty. All the data is kept in the US, no offense, but also the idea that we had variable promises from the AI companies that said, oh, depending on the settings you use, or if you don't untick this or something, then the data you provide to the AI might actually be used to train future iterations of the AI, which means that the things you provide might actually come up in future AI responses, which was a bit uncomfortable for us. And so we ended up saying, well, there's no tool out there that can really do this for us. And so we ended up building a tool ourselves. And the tool is called Cogniti.ai. And I want to show you a couple of examples of some of the ideas that you've come up with in the Padlet, which kind of demonstrate how an AI can be steered and controlled and informed by instructors to do what you want. Okay, so it's kind of like a Khanmigo, but it's a Khanmigo you can build yourself. Okay, or kind of like a Duolingo, but it's a Duolingo you can build yourself. Okay, and you can control and have that visibility over completely. So I'm going to tab out of this screen. I'm going to show you a couple of ideas, and some of the ideas are based on topics that you've raised here in the Padlet. The first one I want to show you is Jean's FAQ agent. So Jean is a coordinator of a third-year course here at Sydney University, and she has a fairly large, for third year, fairly large student cohort of a few hundred students, and often she has students asking her a lot of questions on the discussion board. She's also got a 22-page FAQ document, but as a busy student, who reads a 22-page FAQ document? And so instead of relying on the FAQ document, what she's got is she's able to build an agent like you see on the screen, and the student can come and converse with the agent and they can say, my group member isn't showing up, and what do I do? And so this might be an emailed question that you might get from a student, but what the student can do here is that they can actually engage with this AI which Jean built in order to actually get the 24/7 answer to their syllabus question, which is what do I do by group work? And you can see here that what it's doing is that because this particular AI has been informed by the FAQ document, it's actually able to give very specific advice, which is specific to this particular course, Jean's course. And so it's seeing, it's talking specifically about, Canvas discussions and contacting the unit coordinator and these kind of things and discussing with your tutor, all things which are in that FAQ document, which students will never read, but actually the AI is helping to surface that information out for students, answering those syllabus questions 24/7. Okay, and students can chat with this. This can be embedded into Canvas and those kind of things. So that's one of the ideas, that if you could build one of these AI doubles of yourself, and I'll show you the kind of the guts behind it actually, since we're here. So the guts behind it really is just this is the instruction that's been given to the AI. Act as a friendly college tutor. Answer precisely, don't make things up. And then the resources that this AI has been provided is basically the FAQ document that students never read. And so because it's been informed with that kind of suggestive prompt, and also this resource, this AI agent is able to provide this kind of response to students. Now, the other example I wanted to show was based around this idea of feedback, which received a lot of hearts over here on the top right. Provide thorough and consistent feedback to all student work. So I've got a couple of examples I want to show you here. Which one should I show you? I might show you this one as well, actually. So, okay, all right. For this one first, actually, no, I'll show you this one first. This one is an AI which I actually use myself in one of my own courses this semester. And the idea here is that the AI can function to be a 24/7 feedback provider before a student turns in their assignment. Okay? So I'm going to just use ChatGPT on a different screen to write up a fake student assignment for me. Write a 200-word reflection on a teaching issue in higher education. All right, I'm just going to copy and paste that ChatGPT generated assignment response for me here. But while ChatGPT is generating a response for me, what I'll show you is the kind of the prompt behind this agent. And so what I'm telling this agent to do is basically act as an expert faculty member. Okay. I'm going to give the AI the assignment information that I also give to my students. I'm going to give the AI some rules to follow, and I'm also going to give the AI a rubric that I actually give to my students anyway. And so the assignment information is here, copied and pasted from Canvas. The rubric is here, again, copied and pasted from Canvas. And the rules of engagement are down here as well, okay? Use UK English because we're in Australia. Don't rewrite text for the user, okay? Don't evaluate their work, and only discuss topics relating to education and students. So this means that my students can, from within Canvas, they don't have to click that, Canvas just appears for them. But then what they can do is that they can, I'm just going to do this, can you give me feedback on the below? I'm going to copy and paste a fake student piece of work, which ChatGPT wrote. And because this AI now knows about my assignment, knows about my rubric, knows about my expectations, and knows about the rules of engagement, it's able to provide very specific feedback to my students based on what I require in this particular assignment. And then, okay, so it's saying it's my thing's a bit too long. That's great. And so what I could do is I could say, okay, can you give me an example of improving the connection between context and issue? Okay, and as a student, I can iterate with this agent just like I would a tutor if that tutor was available to me at 11 p.m. at night when I'm trying to rush my assignment through, okay? And so it's doing this. Okay, and then I'll ask it, can you rewrite my assignment for me? And so it's obviously saying no, it can't, because I've given it the rule in the instructions here, never rewrite the text for the user. Okay. And so it's another example of, building these agents which can actually help provide consistent 24/7, fairly accurate feedback to your students. I want to show you next how to kind of how we kind of build one of these agents. It's fairly straightforward. I want to pick an example maybe from this. Okay, let's have a look. Let's see. Okay, what I might do is, all right, I might look for this one here, the one at the bottom left here, which is keep them motivated, understand when they get stuck, redirect when needed. Okay, so to build these agents, what you basically do as an instructor is you come along and say, I've got an agent idea I want to make. I'm going to come and build this. I'm going to do it for biology because I'm a biologist. So I'll say biology coach. Okay. And I can say act as an expert in college level biology. The user is an undergraduate. Your role is to ask good questions to help them unpack a topic. Do not give them the answer. Instead, ask them insightful questions to help them improve their understanding. If they get lost, make your questions easier. Adapt to their level. Okay, only ask one question at a time. All right, so that's my instructions to my AI agent, and then I'm going to choose GPT-4 because that's more powerful. And I've got my biology coach, and from here I can basically start editing this prompt, or I can start to chat with my coach. I could say, okay, help me with photosynthesis. All right, so started off, okay, photo means light. Okay, and I'll say no idea. And then they can say, all right, let's start to unpack this together. And I can keep iterating with this agent. So to build this agent or this AI double of yourself takes almost no time. It takes a few minutes of basically conversing with AI in plain English. And now you've got this agent which can actually function for your students to be the AI double for yourself, the best available teacher for them when you are not necessarily available. And this means that you can spend your time with students on more productive things, which are more valuable for that kind of human interaction time that you have with together with students. Okay, so that's kind of that's Cogniti, and the thinking that we have behind it is basically not to see AI or Cogniti or agents or Carnegie or those kind of things as a replacement for humans, but rather something which makes new things possible. Okay, so I love this New York Times quote from a couple of months ago, which is if we kind of think about what's left for us as people in the age of AI, we diminish ourselves. But if we rather think about what is possible for us now as humans and teachers, it really helps us to embrace the possibilities with AI and think about how we can actually use AI for good. Brett, I think hand over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Danny. I'm looking at, when you get a chance to get caught up in the comments as well, I'll take a scan through here and I'll go back to share in just a moment. If you go back to about 142 or so and look at some of the comments or questions, that'd be great there. As far as integration into Brightspace, Katie asks.
So we have Canvas integration currently. We're working on integration for other LMSs this year.
Great. And then I know Steve had asked, should you or can you upload an entire OER textbook into Cogniti?
The question is, should you? Usually what we advise with these agents is to produce agents which are very specific. So if you're teaching a economics course, you might have one agent for supply and demand, another agent for another topic. And so topic-based agents are usually better because, like people are saying in the chat, it uses retrieval augmented generation, RAG, to do its answering. And so having more specific resourcing is better.
Great. And then one other maybe that I'll pick for now is, do instructors get a report of all the interactions by their students? So maybe they're great learning what the needs might be.
Yeah, it's a good point. Let me just quickly share my screen actually, because I forgot to show you that. So for every agent that you create, what you can do is, as an instructor, you can go back in and actually view the conversation history, and then this will show you what your students have been talking with the AI about. And if you don't have time to view all those things, then what you can do is you can go in and actually get the AI to summarize those topics for you. And so the AI will very quickly read through the student conversations, and then it'll actually show you, oh, these are the topics my students are going in with, and maybe the topics that I need to cover again in my class. Okay, so there's full trackability for instructors and full control over the AI because we feel that's really important. We hear that's really important for instructors.
Great. And any other lessons learned to share, Danny? Let's see, from the instructor perspective or student enablement perspective, what sort of anecdotal or do you have data to date showing impact as much as you can control for?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So we've interviewed maybe half a dozen of our early pilot instructors, and what they're saying basically is that they're all using it for different purposes. It's not just tutoring; it's for role play, it's for question answering, it's for essay topic development, and all those kinds of feedback and those kind of things. And so it's not just about tutoring. I think we limit AI if we think about tutoring. So what they're saying is that their students are. It's interesting to see how students interact with the AI because they can see how students interact with the AI. They're able to actually get an insight into student thinking and misconceptions far beyond what they would otherwise be able to do because of those conversations that students can actually have with this kind of live tutor. So I think that's been one of the main insights. From student perspective, our students are saying that it's really valuable to have this kind of safe and controlled environment where they can actually play with the AI and work with it. And they know it's the teacher who's built it for them. And so they really find that useful.
Great, thank you. Let's see, that's not what I wanted. I'll go to slideshow there and then I'll just advance forward. Okay, apologies, let me exit out from that. And here we go. Now we've got the correct screen. And then we'll have the link to Cogniti going into the chat here in just a moment. What we'll do is we'll wrap up with any final questions we can get to. And then I just want to make sure to clarify on some of the resources that we have for you. So here's the extensive resources we have. First of all, I'll share that we've recently launched a platform for instructors to be able to use our Curie platform, and for instructors to be able to build instructional resources. So this is different than Cogniti. It's a different type, where Cogniti is more about the student interaction and the AI agent helping the student in that way. This is more from the instructor role or perspective. How can it help them develop resources for those instructional moments? So we have these optimizers we've developed, and other resources as well, in our Curie platform. And these optimizers, they act as sort of tools, templates, or wizards. You're in a web interface and you're going through a form of an optimizer that can ask you questions and elicit responses that are based on your context, your purpose for that assignment. You know, if it's developing a group project assignment, then it's going to ask you about the topic, the objective, and those different types of factors about grouping, about a group charter, about the modality of the course. And in a matter of minutes, you can then have this group project assignment developed for you that you can adapt or adopt. It's editable by you at any time, but we have AI embedded and learning science embedded behind that to help develop the best models for these different types of instructional experiences for students. So we invite you to go ahead and have free access to some of those resources through the link that should be in chat now. And of course, you've got the QR code. So a little bit on how we're enabling AI to work for the instructor from the instructional and resource building and learning experience building purpose. So great. Let's see. Oh, did not mean to go out. Bear with me a moment here. Okay, we're back. And then I know there were some questions about using AI for research. I saw that come up. We've got that as part of our playlist here. The webinar that we did a couple months back, fabulous webinar about how to use AI through the entire research problem development, through discovery and analysis, and even write-up and conclusions process on how it can work with you to streamline a lot of those steps and give you good input along the way and things to think about. But again, you still in control as the expert of the domain as you do so. And then an invitation for our next conversation, where we'll talk about ethics and equity with AI, leading the way. And that's one in our leadership panel series that we do every month or two. And that's going to be on Wednesday, May 15th at 12 p.m. Eastern. That's the registration link for you in the chat. And we're going to have Vin Del Casino, who's Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs at San Jose State, and David Weil, VP and CIO for Ithaca College, for that conversation, and moderated by our own Carrie O'Donnell, who does this great thought leadership series for us. All right, and let me go ahead and put that up on the screen, and then I'll get chat back up there. And we're about to time here, but let's see if any other questions or comments. Danny, anything else you wanted to address while I was speaking there?
No, I think everything you said is great, Brett. I think we're very aligned, and with people in this session as well, around, you know, AI has to be in the domain of the instructor. We need to be able to control it. We know what is best for education and for our students, and so yeah, if personalized learning, I think is a great thing, as long as we can know what's going on and we can control it.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at more of these comments, I always fear not responding to or acknowledging someone's comment or question. As these webinars get larger, it's hard to always address those. So feel free to reach out as well. And then I can look back into the chat. And I see, Danny, you've responded to some of those in the chat. The time it took you to build this, obviously it wasn't just you, but I know you're playing a lead role for Cogniti.
Yeah, it's been a labor of love for us actually at Sydney University to do this. We see the power of AI, and we want to put this in people's hands. And this is one way that we see to do this.
Great. Speaking of labor of love, thanks, Danny, for again getting up before 5 in the morning your time to do such a great job sharing with us, and you know, showing your efforts and expertise and how you're applying that with your colleagues and for your students. It's really impressive.
Thanks so much, Brett.
Yeah. And thank you everybody for attending. Love that I'll be able to go back and look at those Padlets, and feel free to access those as well. Thank you very much.